This is a reminder that to attendees that this meeting is a formal meeting, and I can advise that members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak during public open session, but not at other times. The meeting is being filmed. By being present, attendees are deemed to have agreed to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings. I can advise that attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as that would infringe the data protection rights of that individual. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor David Alban, Cliff Andrews, Nick Gurney, Peter Tarrant, Ernest Bauer and Sarah Hughes. Do we have any other apologies?
And Councillor Tranter.
And Councillor Tranter. Yes, that's right. He messaged me. Sorry. Item 2, declarations of interest. So we'll take pecuniary, then non-pecuniary. Does anybody have a pecuniary interest in any of these items? No. Does anyone have a non-pecuniary interest? No. Okay, item 3, chairman's announcements. I don't really have any announcements, just to thank officers for putting this agenda together. We have quite a few really important items on the agenda this evening, and I hope that's a sign of how this committee is just becoming a tad more strategic and a point of elevation. So we need to think collectively about how we put these agendas together, and it's been a bit of a learning experience for me in my first meeting doing that, but hopefully with the town council's administration and with some input from central beds, we can get to a point where we've got some early visibility of what's coming on to future agendas. So we will get to that point towards the end of this meeting. Item 4, public open session. We don't have any members of the public here. Do we have any online? No. Okay. Item 5, minutes of previous meetings. To receive and approve as a correct record the minutes of the Biggleswade Joint Committee, which was held on Thursday, the 24th of July. So I think we go through these for accuracy, and we're on page 9 of our packs. Does anybody have any accuracy points on page 9? Page 10? Page 11? Page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15. No, so we're happy that this is a correct record. Is that okay?
Move that we agree.
Thank you. We now go through on item 6 for matters arising. So same set of minutes, and I'm on page 9 again. Does anybody have any matters arising on page 9? No. Page 10. Page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15. No matters arising. Okay. Item 7, outstanding action. So this is really just something to note. It's a slight change to the way we've set this agenda in the past. So we previously sort of had a bit of a tracker for whether stuff was red, amber and green. Some of it was a bit more strategic than others. But this item 7 is really the outstanding actions and the big things that people have raised and that might be coming up for discussion, not necessarily today, but at a future meeting. So we have 2 items here. The first is the call for sites to be discussed at the January 2026 Joint Committee. And the other one was on the ICB, so that was an action to send questions ahead of the January meeting, which they'll now be attending, and I can confirm Councillors Whitaker and Barrett have both done that. So if others do, please email me. Councillor Russell, with your microphone.
Just a correction to what's written there, because it's the finalised list of questions to the ICB rather than the Town Council, surely.
Questions to the ICB, yes.
Thank you.
On the agenda, that's okay. We will submit it to the ICB. It'd be awkward, wouldn't it? Okay, are there any comments on outstanding actions? No. Bear in mind, I will just stress this. If this is likely to change, I will try to let members know in advance. The call for sites, we'd need to have a think about what we want to get from that agenda item, and I'll do my best to canvass opinion ahead of that. And if there's not necessarily appetite to discuss it in this forum, then that's okay. Councillor Russell.
I don't know whether the 15th of January is a bit early, but we were told that the assessment of the sites put forward in the call for sites would be ready in the new year. And so that item was to have a first look at what is actually being proposed for Biggleswade.
Okay.
So it may be okay or it may not, but hopefully we might have a list of the sites that are proposed to come forward.
Yes, I think we have some of them in our pack actually. Hayley?
I just wonder if, Chair, we could contact Jenny Selly and ask when that assessment document will be ready, because they should have a feel, I would have thought, whether it'll be ready in time for the 15th.
Happy to do that. Can you minute that as an action for me, please? That's head of planning at Central Beds for me to contact them to do what Hayley just said. Any further comments? No, okay. So those outstanding, we have those as outstanding actions. Item 8, invited speakers. We don't have any invited speakers in this section, but we do have invited speakers over the items of consideration, which is item 9. So item 9A is the draft highways capital plan for members to receive and provide feedback on the draft highways capital plan for Biggleswade, which will be presented on screen. Members can also ask to receive and consider a list of priority areas. So essentially we have, the town council has considered what it considers some of the sort of hot spots for highways that need a little bit of work. It's got that in a priority list, which is on page 17 of your packs. So I notice this is separated into some which are sort of resurfacing, which is what I think this item is really about, whereas the latter bullet points are much more probably related to LC whips and separate conversations. Do we have, is Gary Powell joining us? Asia, do we have a representative? Oh, you're joining us. I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. Right, introductions, then let's go.
Good evening. I'm Emma Murden, Head of Service for Highway Maintenance. I've met some of you previously. So yes, so this evening we've got a presentation on the Highways Capital Programme. So this time of year we always develop the capital programme. We've come here today to show you some of the scheme proposals we've got for the Biggleswade area. So if we go to the next slide, we'll give you an outline of some of the things, works we've done in 25-26 in the area, explain a little bit how we developed the programme, look at the budget process, and then what we're proposing for next year's programme, and then happy to take general questions thereafter. So moving on, what we've achieved this year, we've done 25 carriageway resurfacing schemes in central beds, 2 footways. The transport and active travel programme has delivered 14 schemes, 3 rights of way, 2 bridges and structures, and 4 drainage schemes, and work's ongoing obviously to the end of the financial year. So if we look a little bit closer to home, we've got some examples there. We've done some resurfacing in Saffron Road. Also looked at pedestrian improvements this year and some bus priority measures as well. So there are things going on in the area at the present time. So to outline the budget process a little bit, it's becoming increasingly challenging from central government, as I'm sure you probably all appreciate. So some blocks of grant funding we have been advised, and other blocks we haven't. So maintenance blocks still to be determined, whereas the transport integrated block has been allocated. So we're still waiting for that to be confirmed. So therefore we've had to develop a programme developed around a number of assumptions. So we've just stuck to the assumptions of what we know this year, even though we haven't had it fully confirmed for next year yet. So it will still be TBC and we'll go to full council later in the year, but by then we should know what those grant settlements look like. So what we've done is a flexible approach to schemes, and what we'll look to do is develop the programme around the budget that's available to us. So therefore we've got a 3-year pipeline to enable us to actually have that scope and agility within some of the schemes we're actually delivering. But focus will remain on works where evidence shows the greatest need. So we remain agile in terms of the delivery and investing our budgets wisely. So we've got an indicative list for 26-27. It's a complete mixture you're going to get presented tonight, and you kindly also put some proposals forward to us, which we're looking into at the moment. We'll be able to feed back at a later point. So it could be footways, drainage, structures, rights of way, safety improvements, active travel. You mentioned LC whips already, those sorts of agendas. But the programme is also subject to further refinement once we've got a bit more clarification around funding and what is actually achievable within the budget limits that we have and the resources we have. So how we derive that programme, it's based on a data-led approach. So we've developed a number of different condition data spreadsheets. Along with that, we put inspection records, insurance claims, also the amount of customer inquiries we've had for various pieces of road and the expenditure for those lengths of road. We're also looking to develop it so that we combine maintenance priorities also with road safety priorities. So we're aligning as many pots of money as possible to deliver value for money. We still remain on a long-term strategy in terms of maintaining the asset and also any changes that happen on street. So we want to be a bit more proactive than reactive where we can be. Prioritisation also considers the safety and the network importance and the public impact. And as I say, that's around the active travel pieces as much as anything as well. This enables us to be transparent and consistent, and therefore we've also got that prioritisation and ranking around the schemes that we do. So we've got more narrative as to how we prioritise across the piece. So in designing that programme, as I say, we've got road condition data, which then helps develop the maintenance programme. We also then refer to the local teams as well for their local knowledge, and local members' input is important to us too. That helps to make sure that we understand how people use the network, but also where our priorities might need to be. We also need to take the life cycle planning into account, so extending that asset life at minimum cost overall to that asset's life, not just firefighting the conditions in the poorest state, because we need to invest our money wisely. We do collaborate across teams, and we do that on a regular basis, and we try and align the resource, internal resource, so we don't have duplication to make sure we're as efficient as possible. So moving on, how we develop the programme. So that's why we come to you now. So early October, we developed these capital programmes. A lot of work's done over the summer months to develop that. So we're here in November coming to share where we've got to in that programme at the moment, give you an opportunity to feedback on some of our proposals. We then combine that with the draft medium-term financial plan process in December, with a view that we should have more clarity from government then in terms of what our maintenance grant and settlements look like. That will then be put forward to full council in February. Then we develop a more defined capital programme, so we start to work out what that looks like throughout the year and when we may come do works. And then we start with a lot of vigour in April when the budgets are refreshed and try to get that going. A lot of planning happens earlier in the year just to make sure that we can hit the ground running in April. Let's do as much as we can in the summer months because that's the more productive ones for us. So to bring to Biggleswade area, what we're looking to do, we have 2 rights of way schemes. Cemetery Park, making sure we can surface the bridleway, footpath 9 as well, looking to construct those next year. Active travel, so improving cycling in the area. There's links around Baden-Powell Way to improve that. And then there's the 2 bus improvement schemes on Potter Road and in Marketplace that we're looking to deliver next year. I know a number of proposals you put forward to us for maintenance. As I say, we're looking at those at the moment. We'll be able to feed back to you at a later date. So in order to manage expectations, a capital programme is based on what we know today in terms of funding allocations, but also demand on the network. We could have a weather event or a difficult winter and that could change. So we try and stay as agile as possible and react to those various changes. All of our resources and officers of capacity is fully allocated. So a lot of ad hoc requests we can't accommodate because there's a lot of planning in terms of design and what it is we're actually going to do on the network, not only from CBC officers' perspective, but also our supply chain partners that are actually delivering on our behalf. So we look at focusing on the agreed plan to make sure we use our funds effectively and as efficiently as possible. We're more than happy, obviously, to hear your views, and we value that. So any points that you'd like to raise with us, please send to Highway Inquiries, and then we can respond to you from there. So what we'd like from you today, really, now you've seen a little bit about what we're proposing to do in the area, is to review what we've put before you, and we can share the presentation around after today's committee, and then respond back to the Highway Inquiries inbox by the 28th of November. And then we'll look to respond to your various queries by the 10th of December. And then we'll look to put the final programme on the website once it's been confirmed by full council later in February. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Russell, then Councillor Barrett.
It's very interesting to understand the process, but I wonder if we could go back to the actual list of what's happening in Biggleswade, because I didn't even understand some of them, and I'd like to understand exactly what those schemes are.
Can we jump back a couple of slides, please, Asia, to the, I think it had a green background and it was a grid. That's it. Perfect. Councillor Barrett, did you have, sorry.
It's slightly linked. I mean, in one of the earlier slides, you said that everything was data-led in what you're doing. I'd like to just understand how you collate and collect that data. Sort of flippantly, is it like a little Google car driving around all the streets around Central Beds trying to understand what needs to be done? Or is it just from these sorts of meetings where we provide a list of things that we think need to be done? Is that actually how it happens, or is it truly data-led?
Yes, please, Emma.
So each aspect has a different way of doing it. So for street lighting, it's based on the structural and electrical testing, and we prioritise what we need to do from there. For bridges and structures, that's based on the general and principal inspections that have to be done on a cyclic activity. Then we analyse that data. For road condition and surfacing, that's based on the scanner data, which is a vehicle that drives the network that tells us the deformation of that surface treatment. We also do scrim for skid resistance. Each of the inspectors' vehicles that you see, the vans that go around on the network, also have a BISALA systems like AI video surveillance, in terms of that then gets analysed, and we have a RAG rating for that. It was 3 criteria, it's gone to 5 now from government with a new passcode. Then with road safety schemes, they're analysed around the accident data. Rights of way, a number of those are legacy or driven by planning, but a number of them are also health and safety issues and key areas where we feel we need to make improvements for factors of safety. Then active travel, obviously you have the LC whips and other documents, and bus improvement plans that are similar for the transport block. So yeah, for maintenance, it's definitely fed by the data, but we do put the area teams, analyse that, and we check the condition on site, and we listen to local views around that as well.
Councillor Russell, then Councillor Whitaker.
So the first question is the last item. You've got compliance improvements to bus-only section on the marketplace. What does that mean? Because what the town council has been looking at for a long, long while is to get rid of that bus exit on the market square now that we've got the bus interchange. And we've been asking for a long while of Central Beds that we look at bus stops on the high street so that we don't need that bus interchange, and so that we have a larger market square for the town. So I'm interested on what compliance improvements to the bus only section means, because I really don't know.
Do we know what that means, Emma?
This evening I don't, but we can get back to you in terms of the granularity of that. I imagine because it's got design and construction, sort of a drawing or a detailed design probably isn't available yet. So it looks like they'll be doing both the design and construction phases next year.
But the point is that really necessary if we're going to get rid of, I mean, we've got a bus interchange up here that we've been trying to encourage bus companies to use, and there is more bus usage now. And the whole idea of that was to take buses off the market square. So why are we spending more money on the market square for whatever reason when the whole thing should be closed down? You know, I'm sorry, I know you don't know the detail, but that's the question in my mind. You know, why are we spending money when there's lots of other things to spend it on in Biggleswade? I mean, I can understand the other bus one, that the Central Island at Grove Road, Potton Road might be difficult for buses. But I don't know why Biggleswade Footpath 9 in Furston Hall Road, because there's going to be all that construction of 416 houses along Furston Hall Road. So again, are we putting the cart before the horse when it might be damaged again when the houses are built? That's the question that's going in my mind, because you're very right to point out that there's a limited pot of money. So I'm concerned that we're spending it in the wrong way.
Is footpath 9, does that run across the, where does that run? Is that across the top of Carter Meadow? Was that upgraded to a bridleway? Because there's a bridleway that runs out of Furston Hall. Do we know where footpath 9 is? Yeah, have a look. Hayley, you had a, Councillor Whitaker, sorry, you had a comment.
Right, you can call me Hayley, I don't mind. I've just got a few points. I'm always disappointed when I see the plans because I always think we want more. That's fair, isn't it? A few things. If Councillor Tranter here, I know his ears would have pricked up when you said skid resistance, that you had ways of measuring that, because I know he's been on a real mission at the moment around the Baden-Powell Way Saxon Drive roundabout. And actually, historically, I handed that over to him because there's been an issue there for forever in terms of skidding. So the minute there's and I know there's an ongoing email conversation at the moment about this, the minute there's even the sniff of moisture in the air, the road becomes ridiculously slippery and cars are flying off the road. And it's one of those, you know, you deal with the incidents before they become bigger accidents. And we get a lot of incidents there. And in fact, I think he might have had an incident himself as well. And I know years ago, we looked into this previously, and we think there's a problem with the tarmac there and that it's actually too oily. And so the oil was coming to the surface, and we did treat it, but the treatment doesn't last forever. Now that to me sounds like a capital project. It sounds like we probably don't want to resurface the whole thing. But it sounds like it does need looking at, and I'm surprised that it hasn't come up, first of all, and because I know there are very active conversations around that. So I'll make sure that you're involved in those conversations going forward. But I think if you have a way of measuring skid resistance, we might be quite interested to look at that particular location. Town council members might be better informed on this than I am, but I know we had issues with rights of way along the river and erosion, and I know that there were issues around who was going to pay for it in terms of whether it was the Environment Agency or whether it was us. And this kind of comes into another question I have, because it's that partnership working, and so making the best use of Central Bed's money and taxpayers' money by working with our partners. So what's happening with that erosion work? Because in the winter that always gets worse, and that does become a danger when we have people, because people like to walk along the river. But it's the same on Hitchin Street. The number of times that road gets dug up because of Anglian Water, and I keep hearing rumours of Anglian Water are going to redo all the sewers all along the road, and the whole thing's going to be closed for months and months on end. And that's an opportunity potentially to share the cost of resurfacing, because it's patchwork down there and it's not great. Is that an opportunity that we should be looking at for that partnership working to help reduce our capital costs on that sort of piece of work? So lots there, sorry, but it is that partnership piece I'm quite interested in.
Any thoughts on the partnership piece, Emma?
Sorry, if I could, Chair. So there's probably 2 points, if I could sort of take it in order, if that's okay. So if there's anything you don't think is the right way, right in the programme, and you don't think we should be investing in it, we'd welcome those comments as much as what you'd like is in terms of what you think could be reallocated to another scheme. So we're happy to hear both angles. And then in terms of those other key points, when we develop the programme, we actually have whole workshops where we get as many people in together to collaborate. We also get street works, so any forward planning, advance noticing of any utilities that are going through anywhere, we try and combine that with the works we're doing. And there's every opportunity then we can actually share the same closures, minimise disruption to the travelling public, and get better value for money for the public per se. Yes, we do try and coordinate, combine that wherever possible. And it is one of those opportunities where we need to look at what we need to do and when, and making sure the investment is in the right place at the right time to achieve that. So we do try and collaborate with colleagues, but also that wider industry, whether it's utilities or when you mention the bank, our flood team, as well as our rights of way team, we are liaising with the Environment Agency. So we do try and balance where we're putting the investment and make sure that all parties that have some responsibility play a part in actually achieving the outcomes we want to achieve.
Thank you. Oh, yes, go on briefly.
Just a quick one around prioritisation. So the town council mentioned London Road, and again, it's always disappointing not to see London Road on there. I'm sure you came down it when you came into Biggleswade. Massive big road, probably the busiest road in the whole of Biggleswade, I would argue, for both freight. You know, we do get heavy traffic down there as well as a lot of residential traffic. So when you get a small crack or a small pothole up here, potholes, I always say, they never heal themselves. They get bigger very quickly, and actually getting them repaired takes a little while, by which point that, you know, we're getting to the point where they're starting to get a bit dangerous. It does, sections of it do cry out for resurfacing, is what I'm trying to get to. So in terms of how busy a road is, does that factor into your prioritisation? Because given that is probably one of our major routes through the town, does that factor into your prioritisation process?
Do you want to reply on that, Emma? And then I'll make a quick comment.
Thank you. Yes,
Busyness.
so we do take the hierarchy and the classification into account, and road usage, and we also look at various local factors that might drive more vehicle movements or pressure points, but also understanding what our resilient highway network looks like. So prioritising things like hospitals, town centre areas around some of our priorities. So yeah, we do take local factors into account.
Okay, I'll just make a quick comment, then I'll come to you, Councillor Strawn. So I think somewhere in the back of my mind, footpath 9, I wonder whether it is near, I think it's called Churchill Place or whatever it's called, or that there is a walk-through if you're walking from west to east over Potton Road Bridge on the north side. If you turn left, there's some steps down, and I think there is actually a public footpath that runs through there towards Furzenhall Road and Winston Crescent. So I have a feeling that might be footpath 9. At the moment, it is just grass. I would question whether or not it is a priority. We seem to manage okay without it at the moment. So we'll leave that for members to discuss. The only other thing I wanted to draw attention to, and then I will come to Councillor Strawn, is we obviously have a list from the town council. We've had Hitchin Street and London Road probably sort of re-emphasised by Central Beds councillors sat around the table. The only thing I would flag here is on the 2 which mention Potton Road Railway Bridge, we mentioned traffic lights, which I don't think we have on that bridge. We mention overgrown vegetation, which I don't really think is what this conversation is about, but notwithstanding that Potton Road Bridge is in itself extremely dangerous. So if we were, as a committee, to sort of give some weight to what the town council has said, would I be out of place in saying Hitchin Street, London Road and Potton Road Bridge are just things that really, really need looking at? Is that fair comment? I'm seeing some nods. I'm going to come to Councillor Strawn, and I'll come to you, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the town council list, there is mention of Hitchin Street between Bonds Lane and the marketplace. Now, that appears, I think, to be a drain that's collapsing underneath that, which goes back to partnership working, because that area has been patched with tarmac several times, I think, in the last couple of years. There's something seriously wrong there, and you're just going to keep on patching it. So that, I would have thought, would have been merited some measure of capital works, possibly with the drainage authority, who Anglian Water, I'd have thought, to get that right, because there's clearly a problem there because the road surface is collapsing.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. Yes, there is a safety element there. I'm going to come to Councillor. Are you going to mention footpath 9?
Footpath 9, we've just looked it up. It is literally the road that comes up from Furzenhall Road and goes all the way across towards the waterworks, which is going to be the centre of a brand new development, and we shouldn't be investing any money whatsoever in it.
Okay, so I was incorrect. I stand corrected. Thank you. Can I come to Councillor Watkins? He hasn't spoken yet.
So I think the presentation indicated that you'd feed back to the town council on their suggestions by the 10th of December. We don't expect to have the fairer funding settlement confirmed by the government till about the 15th of December. That said, I'd very much proceed on the basis that there's going to be nothing particularly fair about it. and I think we are going to be constrained into relying on grant funding only, would be my guess. So I think what would be useful is to know how much these items are going to cost, and if you can support the town council in working out how much their proposed alternative schemes would cost, so that we're dealing in the basis of reality and not a wish list that can't be afforded. But that said, the town council know very much what the town needs, and I think certainly in terms of the bus stop suggestion, yes, there are far more important priorities such as Hitchin Street, but they do need to be costed. So could you work with the town council on that?
Yes, Councillor Barrett.
Just a very quick thing. Is the process working? Because we've got a list here and we've got a list here.
Yep.
And the two don't seem to be marrying up.
But well, hold on,
Yes,
hold on.
that.
There is now a process.
Yes,
there is now a process. So yeah, no, so just to take a step back. Yeah. So I never really appreciated this until I became a Central Beds councillor. Ward councillors are sort of consulted, if you like, but it's a little bit more for information, sounding board. Does this seem about right? And when I became joint committee chairman, I said I think that same courtesy needs to be extended to the town council, so that you've got a formal route in, which this is. So no, they don't match up, but the opportunity tonight is to say, look, if there's stuff on the screen that doesn't work, is there any that we can put across through and package up a proposal that says, could we therefore look at the costing around, even if it is just London Road, for example, or even if it is just Potham Road Bridge? So Councillor Russell, do you want to make a contribution?
Yes, please.
With your microphone.
First of all,
with your microphone, sorry.
The list that's within the agenda was put together by Public Land and Open Spaces Committee because there was such a short deadline, so it hasn't actually gone to full council. But that's the list from our side, and obviously what's up there is the list from Central Beds Highways side. I think some of the things on the list, particularly the ones at the bottom, are not part of this because they're cycling provision and one thing and another. I mean, why we have on here there a segregated cycle route from Jordan's Mill to Langford Garden Centre, which is 99% in Langford Parish, I do not know. So I'm a bit concerned that this isn't the best list from the council. But one of the things I'd like to talk about is Bonds Lane, particularly from Foundry Lane through to Hitchin Street. It's not used by many vehicles because it's one way, but it's used all the time by pedestrians. It is a complete mess with holes and bits of tarmac put down. I don't understand why the developers of the flats there were not asked to resurface the road when they'd finished. That was a real oversight by planning, I think. But it's not a very pleasant place to walk through, and it's not very pleasant for the people who live in the flats to be living next to that. No. And that really should be resurfaced and properly done with a proper footpath down the one side of it. So that's one thing that I would add. And the other thing, this business of Hitchin Street between the Market Square and Bonds Lane, yes, it is a complete mess. Colleagues are right. And I'm hearing all sorts of funny things because apparently two people who the shopkeeper thought were from Central Bedfordshire Council were in his shop recently saying that they were going to put bollards outside his shop to mark where the footpath is down, because obviously it's a shared surface. That's bizarre and absolutely silly. You can see where the delineation is supposed to be because of the different paving, but to put bollards in there is just going to create more of a log.
I think we're getting...
I know we're getting off subjects, but this is the sort of thing, I don't know whether it's somebody from Central Beds or not, but what's going on? So I think there does need to be a lot more communication as early as possible between the town council and the highways team.
No, okay. There was we won't dwell on why this went to Public Land and Open Spaces rather than full council. We obviously have the list, and I think we just have to deal with what we have today, given tight budget, tight timelines, and trying to come up with something that frankly, this committee has never even considered in the past. So look, I can see Carol Birtwistle is trying to signal. Carol, did you want to speak briefly? And then I'm going to look for a proposal from somebody, please.
Okay, I've just really listed some of the issues in the chat. So the problems with potholes and sinking surface on London Road in particular lots of pothole repairs on Potton Road near the railway bridge where the surface is a total mess. And the bulk, it's had yellow lines painted over a surface that is incredibly rutted and difficult to cycle on.
Okay. Understood. We can't go through every highways
No,
issue in Biggleswade,
no.
right? So we're going to bring this up a level and we're going to look for a proposal. Can I, if I might just start the ball rolling and then I'll look for somebody on the floor to formalise it, if that's okay. So if I just start with what the town council has written, for the sake of this conversation, I don't think we can look at any of those bottom 5 bullet points around, you know, cycling provision stuff that may come up as part of LC whips separately. I would also stress that the Potton Road points need to just come together and say Potton Road Bridge is dangerous. Forget the stuff about vegetation, forget the stuff about traffic lights. So we really have 3 priorities: London Road, Hitchin Street, and the Potton Road Bridge from the town council's perspective. I'm bringing this up to quite a high level now. We then have what we have on the screen, and I think we've heard comments that the bus service improvement plan round the marketplace is not a priority, and footpath 9 has to be avoided given the amount of construction vehicles that will be using that. Does anyone want to make a more formal proposal about where we go from here? Councillor Whitaker.
I like everything you just said, but I would hate to see Biggleswade losing more money to somewhere else because you know the next on the priority list isn't somewhere in Biggleswade, and the rights of way money. I think I'm sure members are all aware of it's footpath E21, which runs from Back Street to the High Street between all the flats. It's like the surface of the moon, and it's been reported for years and years and years, and it is a really popular cut through. So we have several rights of way. I think somebody mentioned another one a moment ago. That if that footpath 9 works aren't going to go ahead, that the rights of way funding for that are used elsewhere in Biggleswade for rights of way that have been highlighted many times that have got serious issues. I'd like to propose that.
Thank you. Okay, I'll look for a seconder for that in a moment. Is there anything else that we want to add to this proposal around the Symmetry Park Circular Bridle Way and Biggleswade cycleway improvements on Baden Powell Way? I don't know the detail of those. I don't know if anyone around this table does. No. Councillor Russell.
I don't know all the detail of exactly where that's being mentioned on Symmetry Park, but I do know that the phase that they're building at the moment, they've got a balancing pond, which they're making into a feature, and there'll be some benches, picnic benches, and some public art there. And if it's that part to enable people to go round there, then I think that's probably a good idea if they're working with Symmetry Park, because it'll be a much better facility for people in the town.
Okay. I would just stress that bridleway, the access to it from essentially the Saxon Gate estate it's not far off there, but you do actually normally have to walk over Dunton Lane to get to that bridleway. But okay, shall I try to summarise a proposal then? So we will remove from the town council's wording the bottom 5 bullet points related to cycling pedestrian infrastructure. We'll deal with those another day. We condense the town council's priorities to London Road, Hitchin Street, and the Potton Road Bridge, and would really like to work with Central Beds to get an idea of how much those sort of things will cost. Because if it isn't this year, hey, maybe next year, even if we just get 1 or 2 of those, that would be a big win for the town. So would like to work together to understand a rough cost for those 3 potential schemes. And then separately, we ask that we do not prioritise, we remove the bottom row here around compliance improvements to the bus only section on the Market Square, and that footpath 9 funding is diverted elsewhere in Biggleswade to another right of way, potentially the one between, is it Dells Lane and is that the one you're referring to? The High Street and Back Street. Okay. Got all that? Yes. Yeah, please.
Can I also add that rather than having the bus service improvement plan, that the £10,000, £20,000 that was included in last year's annual plan for working out the feasibility of buses on the High Street and Church Street, is that money goes towards that instead, because that hasn't been delivered as far as I'm aware.
No, it hasn't. Okay, got it. Councillor Barrett.
I will second your proposal with that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Do you want to just repeat it so that you're sure we're all on the same bit? No, okay. Okay. Good job we record these meetings now, isn't it? Okay, are there any comments on that? Any last comments on that proposal? Anything we've missed?
The only thing I'll just go back to is the comment I made about is the process working, because this is the first time I've heard about a number of the things that are on this list with the green backing. And I'd like to understand how we can better improve that process, so we as the town council are aware of some of the things that are coming. It would have helped us tonight to have known that already, and perhaps they may not have been on there.
Absolutely. No, totally. We'll take that away. And this is the first year that we're doing this as a joint committee. We'll do it even better next year, and I'll take that on board. So thank you. If we'll just minute that as well, although that's not a formal recommendation, not formally part of the proposal. Okay. All those in favour of the very lengthy proposal, please show. That is everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out. We really do appreciate it. And look, this is new for some members. And if this way of working works for central beds as well, great. But, you know, we'd appreciate any feedback both ways. So thank you ever so much. Thank you for coming. Okay, item 9B. CBC consultation, proposed changes to Ivor Valley School. For members to receive and consider Central Beds Council's consultation on the options to expand Ivor Valley School. So I think many of us are aware of this live consultation. Really, so just to set the scene, Town Council will come to a position, I suspect, on the various options as part of that consultation. It's already been on the Town Council agenda. They have had some questions. I don't know whether we have those questions tonight. No, we do. Sorry, we do have those questions tonight. I don't know whether we have those answers tonight. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but this will come back to it. Can we leave the door open, Ian? Just, you know, it's a fire hazard. Yeah, it could be. Sorry, this is a public meeting. This is a public meeting, and we need the doors to be, I know it's cold, but we do have the doors out there as well. So, yes. We don't, yeah, agreed. Also, if there's, you know, never mind. Okay. Ivor Valley School, Town Council has some questions. It's going to consider them in a little bit more detail, probably at its January or December meeting. So do we have anyone online, Asia? Hello, Daniel, hi.
Good evening.
And Ian, hello. Thank you both for joining. And firstly, sorry for the back and forth we've had over this item, but we are grateful to have you tonight. I've obviously just set the scene. Really, the opportunity, what we're hoping to get from you this evening is just a little bit of background to the consultation. I don't know if you've seen the Town Council's questions. If we have answers, great. If we don't, that's okay. We can address them at a later stage. But if I pass over to you, happy to be in listening mode. So fire away.
Yeah, I might just open really, because we tried to have a bit of conversation about the way in which we wish to deal with this. I think we understand, certainly from previous conversations and understanding, that the council, Biggleswade Town Council, has already seen, or you've all had access to the consultation documentation. So we weren't going to therefore sort of go through a presentation of what that was, but we are here, and I think, you know, we've received the questions. We're very happy to answer all of those as best as we can, and any other point at all in relation to all of this.
That sounds like a very good use of this time, because we have all considered the documents, and I think it's just questions that have come from some of that content which is already in the public domain. And look, if there's things we can't answer, that's okay, but maybe we could have a go. So look, why don't I open to the floor? Is there any of these points that members want to start off with, and we can take the conversation from there? You know, I mean, we can go through them one by one if that's easiest. Happy to take a steer from them. Okay, so perhaps if I start off then. So option 4 clarification on the proposed sites for the school in option 4. So we've heard from the developers to the east of Biggleswade briefly this evening, and I don't think that site option 4 is actually on their site for 1,500 houses, is it? Is it adjacent to it? And could we just get a little bit more context around that? How large is it? How large is the land? What are the challenges around access and things?
You want me to answer that, Dan?
Please.
Yeah. So, thank you, Chair. You're right. It's on Central Bedfordshire Council owned land. It is off Baden Powell Way. Is the committee aware of the site that was formerly considered for a school under the HIF bid? Is that a site that you recognise? And sorry, I just see Dan very big on my screen. I can't see any of you, so you'll need to speak if you recognise it or not.
That's okay. I think it might just be worth you summarising roughly where it is. If I have a go, is it, we have the land east 1,500 houses, which sort of comes out to the east of Baden Powell Way, and then there's two access routes that received planning permission separately so that they could get access to the site. Is it just to the south of the one that comes off of Baden Powell Way? If you all look at page 36, I think it is, of your pack, on a separate agenda item, we actually have the call for sites which are listed, and I think it is just immediately to the south of where the 1,500 homes are due to be.
So that I think that's right, Chair. And I was trying to work out how to describe it to you guys without having a map. But the just south of the roundabout where Planets Way meets Baden Powell Way, is that the same area that you're looking at?
That's right.
And then it's immediately adjacent. So as you're looking at the map, just the right hand side, if you're on Google Maps, you'd see a dark green field. And that is the location that's there. Yeah, and then it's really as per the as per what's in the consultation, really. I mean, there's some plus sides around that because it's completely undeveloped, so there's no constraints to work around in terms of sort of other roads or houses or other infrastructure to fit around. But there are some challenges around that in terms of the specifics of the site. So there are changing levels across the site, which result in quite a bit of cut and fill needed, which makes it quite an expensive site to develop. And obviously it is just a field at the moment. So obviously you would need the access road and quite a bit of drainage to service that site.
Yep. No,
thank you.
helpful?
I don't know how much detail you.
No, that's perfect. I think for now it's actually just knowing the parcel of land, and then members can factor that into their decision making at town council. Councillor Russell.
The question wasn't just about the option 4. It was also about how much of the London Road site would be used, because we understand that if the London Road goes ahead, it would be a 2-storey building, which obviously isn't ideal. So is there enough room on the London Road site to put a single-storey building?
Okay, so I think just to clarify, so on the option 4 and the land east of Biggleswade, that would be is that the only option that's not a split site? That would be the expectation is that would be able to accommodate all of the pupils.
Well, yes, but if London Road, there should be enough room, I would have thought, at London Road. I'm not sure, but it depends whether Central Beds want to use part of that site for other things, and that's what we were asking, because I think this idea of a split site is not good, and the council generally thought it was not good. So we're looking at where a school might sensibly be built that's not on a split site, which is why we were questioning the option 4 site, which has now been clarified. And I understand the difficulties of construction, but since the land is in Central Beds ownership, that's a big step forward. And there is access to it, even though roads and drains, etc., would need to be built. But the question about London Road is it a big enough site, and is Central Beds prepared to put it forward?
Okay, shall we have that question now then? So Ian Daniel. So we have the options related to the London Road site for the school. I think there's one which includes two stories. Is there a reason for that? It's quite a large site, so we're wondering whether it is big enough on its own to go single story, or is that not an option?
No, it's not. It's not an option. It's not big enough. And I think you're right to highlight that that is one of the disbenefits of the option 3. I don't know if it's worth me quickly just recapping on what the options are.
Yeah, do you want to do that? Yeah.
Helpful.
Yes, please.
So effectively, you've got option A and option 1A and option 1B. So both of these sort of option 1s utilise the existing Hitchmead Road site, and they utilise part of the Stratton School site that isn't used. Just to be clear, there's no conflict with Stratton School or the community farm, and that's all been checked out, and they're in agreement on that. With option 1A, the new build is all on the existing school site, and it's car parking on the Stratton Farm site on the website. And I know you've got the link, but sometimes it's easier to look at a picture. The pictures on the website, hopefully, we tried to do them to kind of bring it to life a bit. Option 1B uses the same parcels of land, but effectively the new build is split across the two sites. Option 2 then utilises the current Ivor Valley site and the London Road site. So that is absolutely split site. So that option is single story on London Road, but it's split site. Option 3 just utilises London Road. So that's all new build on London Road. And that's the option as you have a committee have just highlighted, results in a 2-story build, and that is around the site constraints there. Option 4 is the one that we were discussing at the beginning, which is the parcel of land off Baden-Powell Way, and that's new build all on one site. And then option 5 is do nothing. So those are your sort of 6 options, but option 1A and 1B effectively utilise the same parcels of land, just in a different way around. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm going to come to Councillor Whitaker, then Councillor Barrett in a moment. I'm mindful that that's perfect, and I think that brings us all onto the same page. When we get back to the questions, which we will, I'm sure, in a moment, we can probably take bullet points 3, 4, and the final one together, because that's around the finances, whether that factors in the sale of the existing site were we to move to another one, and any funding that might be coming from the Department for Education. So I'm going to come to Councillor Whitaker, then Councillor Barrett.
I'm going to touch on finances, actually. So my understanding is that option 4 is the furthest through the design process, and therefore there is more confidence, if you like, in terms of the costings for that. Can you talk maybe about the confidence in the costings for all of the options, please?
Sorry, would you like me to come back on that?
No, I was going to say, no, I was just handing over to you. Go on, Ian, sorry.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, okay. Yes, Councillor Whitaker, you're right in terms of the design is more developed on that particular option. Essentially, in a nutshell, without a long-winded description, as you go through the design stages, you have a higher level of confidence in what the actual design cost will be. At this stage, they're all relatively early on, but certainly, we are looking at costs built up on a cost per square metre of the proposed buildings, and then those are taken from cost data from similar projects. So at this stage, you've got quite a lot of unknowns, so you have quite a high level of contingency. So we're comfortable that the cost envelope for each scheme in the consultation is correct, but it's right to say that the design is further developed for option 4, which means it has a lower level of contingency. The design for the other options is less developed, which means it has a higher level of contingency, but all of the cost estimates are where they should be at this stage in the REBA stages. And again, without going over that too much, because if any of you were at Corporate Resources Overview Scrutiny, went through in some detail, but the REBA stages are effectively the national, internationally recognised stages from the Royal Institute of Chartered Accountants, Chartered Architects, to make sure you get these things right and you build up the accuracy of the cost as time goes on.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
I think you started to ask my question, which is around option 4, which was to do the cost 66 million, and what happens to the land once that school has moved. And is that factored into the 66 million, the potential sale of that? So is that the actual net figure effectively?
Yeah, so if the whole school went to the east and we sold the current Ivor Valley plot of land, for example, is that a net figure or a gross figure for the build?
No, it's a gross figure. So no values of any land have been taken into account on any of the options. So the figures in the consultation are the gross figures. So option 4 doesn't take into account selling off the current site. Likewise, option 1 doesn't take into account disposal of the option 4 site, and vice versa in all the permutations. The numbers are just the construction costs.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about when some of these sites could be built out, because that presumably has implications for what the estimate is as well.
Chair, just to say just quickly, so all the figures that are in the consultation are comparing apples with apples. So in terms of construction inflation, all that's been equalised across them in terms of the construction programmes. So that should be taken into account in the figures.
Cool. Any further? I think that answers most of the questions. The one that we still have outstanding is how the footpath, so this is the penultimate bullet point, explanation of how the footpath would be managed if CBC adopts the split site option, which I think is 1B. I know that appears to be sort of the preferred option at the moment. We don't need to get into too much detail around why that might be, but what would it, having a bridleway or a footpath going through a site like this seems less than ideal. So I'd just like to know a little bit more about that. Councillor Russell, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, adding to that, I think Councillor Whitaker and I were both party to trying to see how that bridleway could be a more effective link to all the development to the east of the town. So if that bridleway becomes more busier than it is now, more and more busy, that's really going to affect a split site school. And both of those options with a split site are really not good. And nor is the idea of developing the existing school site, because it will be so disruptive to the school, and these children, as some of them are really in need. How can you think about making it into a building site? I mean, one of the youngsters there, I understand, is permanently in a hospital bed and has to be pushed around the site on a hospital bed. With a building site, I mean, it's outrageous, really. But the question that we're asking at the moment is, how can you have a bridleway that's going to become busier and busier with all the building to the east, right through a school site?
Yeah. Should we take those in turn then? Because that's an important one as well. Certainly for me, when I saw option 1A on paper, I thought I could visualize it much better. But obviously the disruption to these particular children of construction is substantial. So do we have any thoughts on the bridleway, how that would be managed, and then on construction were one of the existing site options to be to go forward?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the bridleway, absolutely, it's the two parts are separated by an existing surface public footpath that is obviously footpath, not traffic, as you all know the area. I mean, the exact solution would have to be determined through the next stage, through design team meetings. And I think that's difficult with a lot of this stuff. Is at this stage in the design, we don't have the specific answers to all of these things. There would need to be a solution that absolutely balances people's rights of access, but also ensures that children are safeguarded. So we've talked about the need for secure fencing. There needs to be a secure boundary around the school as a whole, enclosed routes, supervised crossing as and where required. But ultimately, the final arrangements would have to be agreed both with the school and then with highways experts at the time. At the next stage, which would be after this consultation. So I think we're comfortable that it is achievable if that was the solution that went forward following the consultation. But I think those considerations are all things that we would probably expect to come through that consultation process. I guess there's a trade-off between the different options, aren't there?
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that. And I think that's something that members can factor in. I'm going to come to Councillor Strawn and then Councillor Whitaker in a moment. Just lastly, on the construction, so were we to go ahead with something that involves developing out the existing site, presumably that's going to be quite consequential for some of those children. What do the plans around that look like, and how would we factor that into the consultation as well?
Yeah, there's absolutely recognise it's a key consideration, and I would sort of encourage the committee to have a good read through all the information that's on there, and certainly there was I think working group meeting is the right term of the SEND Extraordinary Subcommittee, and head teachers from both SEND and mainstream schools came along to give their experiences and actually lend their support should schemes go ahead. I guess there's two elements to it. One is the specific construction plan and how works would be phased. So at the moment, obviously it's fairly high level and subject to exactly the specifics of the scheme and which option goes forward. But in simple terms, if you took something like option 1B, you would start off by building the new build element that's on the Stratton Farm side. That's obviously the furthest Stratton School side. Sorry, that's the furthest away from the school. You build that. You then move the children into the new build, whilst you then built the next phase of new build. So effectively, you're putting those children into the brand new building, and then doing the construction on the physical far side of the site while you did that. And then you do the refurbishment element last. There'd be a need to not increase the intake of children until those works were complete, because the last thing you do is get rid of all the temporary structures on site. So you would phase the work to keep the disruption as far away from the children as possible. Now, there's an element that, again, it would be a case of working with the school around specifically what that plan would look like, specific needs of the children. Some of the children are very disrupted by vibration or heavy plant and machinery. That's some of the feedback that we've had. Some would just be distracted by the diggers and the construction vehicles and so forth. So work would be phased to do the most disruptive elements when the building is not in operation, during the school holidays and so forth. There would be consideration about modern methods of construction where elements of build are done off site and then craned in. Through the procurement process, we would be working with construction companies that have got a track record in delivering similar schemes in similar settings on live sites, and are able to bring that expertise and work with the school. And I think working with the school would be key, understanding and getting the communications right with the school so that there's a direct relationship. And once the plan's agreed, if there is disruption to children, the school are able to have that conversation with the company that's doing the building and make that intervention. So the detail would come through with the specifics. But those are the sorts of things. And of course, we are used to we delivered build projects on the current Ivor Valley School before, and we delivered schemes elsewhere on existing schools. So we have got some experience, which again is in the consultation document on how we can deliver these whilst minimising disruption to the children.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you. I think we've heard what you've said, and members will make up their mind and reflect on some of that as we consider each of the options. So I've got indications from Councillor Strawn, Councillor Whitaker, and Councillor Barrett. Can I take each of you together, and then we'll get some more answers. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Chairman. The question is about DFE funding, because I'm slightly puzzled on this, because A couple of years ago, there was a tender process for a new special school in Biggleswade, which I think was part funded by DFE. So is there any DFE funding in connection with this new development? Because one would have hoped that if there was funding available for a new special school in Biggleswade, that would have at least been part funding this, rather than it just being from the local council taxpayers.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. We will get an answer to that in a moment. Councillor Whitaker.
Government have pulled that funding, Duncan. There's a quick answer. A few questions. I think it's slightly worrying to hear you talk about having work on one site and moving the kids into that, and then working on the other site and then moving the kids into that, and as if that's something that's quite straightforward for SEND children, that level of disruption. Because actually just asking a SEND child to go to a new classroom can take weeks or months of planning. Asking them to go to 2 new classrooms on 2 new sites in probably quite a short space of time is incredibly disruptive. And more than you and I could ever imagine. And so I think we have to give that some real thought, because it's not as easy as you or I just going to work in a different building. So that's my first thing. I think that disruption is being minimised. And I think it's really difficult for anybody to make an informed decision without having more information on that bridleway. I've already discussed earlier this evening about this sustainable transport corridor that we all were talking about a couple of years ago, and that actually uses that bridleway, if I remember correctly. So if we're talking about building a better, bigger, wider, more impactful, sustainable transport corridor to service Land East, but then we're going to put a school on either side of it, how does that work? It doesn't, does it? So the two things seem to be in conflict. So we make a decision on this, and then it compromises the sustainable transport corridor. So I don't understand in the round how this works and fits in with not just the needs of the children, but the needs of the town as well.
Thank you, Councillor Whitaker. Councillor Barrett.
Echo many of those comments. The preferred option 1B as written here. You mentioned, Ian, that you have to work very much in collaboration to make this work. I'd be interested to know what do the head teacher think, and the teachers, have they been consulted in this? What's their view on what they would consider to be the right option?
Thank you. Do you want to answer that one, Ian, and then we'll go to the DFE funding. So the school obviously do have a position on this, it seems, but I think it was it the chairman of the Board of Governors came to your town council?
Chairman came to see us, but the
no,
teachers.
okay, that's all right. So presumably, do you want to just mention what engagement there is with the school around these options?
Yeah, so I guess there's been quite a bit of engagement with the school on option 4, and then in terms of the other options, we've had various conversations with the school about those options, and best try to reflect those in the consultation document. But I think it's fair to say, Chair, that obviously the consultation is open to all to respond. In fact, myself and some other colleagues are at the school tomorrow to attend a staff meeting, and officers are there all day to answer any questions to help inform their responses to the consultation themselves. So in terms of the school's position, as you say, I think they've probably published that, but this is a consultation, and we work on responses from the school, from teaching staff, from parents, and so forth. And we're certainly down there all day tomorrow, and there are various other engagement events where residents can make their views known, and all of that will be taken into account in the final decision-making process by members.
Thank you. And then on Department for Education funding and the funding sources for these various options.
I'll answer Dan for that one.
Yeah, so the just to reference the earlier point about the free school, so that never got to a point where it was absolutely confirmed by the DFE. It did sort of make quite a long way of intention. However, the DFE via government, because of in all likelihood the ever upcoming white paper, paused all of that opportunity, and so there is no you know, there was never any sort of promise of any particular money or, you know, or position on that materialised or that we could utilise. That said, we do receive some high needs funding, and that's really where all of the source of the external funding comes from. And we obviously the way in which we publish the amount of money that we have is typically via it's high needs capital funding, and so it covers all of the money that we would use for all SEND uses. And I think we received £14 million from the Department of Education. Obviously, there are some other SEND projects that were already underway that required some of that funding, and so presently there is about £9 million worth of funding for all SEND projects in central Bedfordshire. And so some of that is of course assigned in advance, as it were, to Ivor Valley, but it still means that there are several tens of millions of pounds of council borrowing that would be required.
Thank you for explaining. And it's obviously a huge consideration that we are in very big numbers here. And am I right in thinking this is the single biggest capital project CBC's embarked on? It
yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yep.
I think what I want to make the point of, and obviously this has been a point of enormous contention, and an understandable contention, because of course any involved party would want absolutely what's best for for the children in that area. And this, as with many things in SEND, I suppose, bumps up against the fact that there is limited amount of money, albeit that we are talking, the biggest amount of money that Central Bedfordshire has ever spent, and that's at the option 1B. But everything else involves capital borrowing, and therefore there is an opportunity cost, and this is something we noticed within the consultation. And I do want to bring it to life because it is real, that actually if you spend more money than even we have now, one we don't actually have it, but it does have an opportunity cost for other children with SEND in the area, and that's a deeply unpleasant position to be in, but it is reality that I think is important to be appreciated. And just a quick minor note on 1B, part of the reason that it was sought to be the recommended option, one was some of the flexibility that Ian has described, both in terms of the way in which it could be constructed, but also we sort of took the view about whether or not the school might prefer the option of it being, having two distinct buildings, with the idea that with confidence previously that we could find some way to deal with the bridleway. But actually the feedback which was noted within that working group, which is a matter of public record now, certain aspects of it, and other feedback was then the preference for actually that 1A, out of those options, 1A was preferable to 1B. But as with all of these things, this is why it's a consultation. We want to hear views in a fair and balanced way.
Thank you. Okay, I think I'm going to bring this item to a close now. So I think, firstly, thank you both so much for joining, particularly at this time, and apologies for the slight back and forth over your invites, but this is of enormous importance to Biggleswade, and I know pretty much every councillor at Central Bedfordshire genuinely really cares about this. And I have to say, in my relatively short time as a Central Beds councillor, I've been impressed by how much work has been done in quite a short space of time by assets to get this consultation ready. And I'm glad that this is now in the public domain and we're discussing a proper future for this school. So thank you so much for the answers you've provided tonight. And I suspect the Town Council will consider this at their meeting in either December or January, and will provide a formal response to the consultation as a full body. Thank you ever so much. You can leave now, but thank you both so much, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Perfect. Hopefully that's provided some answers for people, and if we need to come back to this in January, we can do that as well. Okay, item 9C, consultation on defining high street areas. So this is the Central Bedfordshire Council consultation on identifying high street areas, and this is particularly related to bringing vacant properties back into use. Stephen, you've sat there so patiently for so long. Thank you for being with us this evening, and you do have an invited speaker tag, so congratulations on that. After you, please.
Okay, I did share a slide deck, but what I will do is I will whiz through them quite quickly, and then members will have them to refer back to. Okay, so if we could skip on, please. So if we skip on to the next slide. So essentially, these are new powers that came to planning authorities through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. Took a little while for the secondary legislation to come into place. That happened last January, and over this year we've been working out how to take them forward. There are a number of pilot councils, which Central Bedfordshire wasn't one, we're all watching to see how these go forward. I think the key thing is that this applies to those vacant properties in a designated high street area that have been vacant for 12 months or longer, or for 366 days plus in a 2-year period. And the evidence around that in terms of a vacant unit register and things is really important, because as you can imagine, if you're talking to landlords about forcing them to take tenants on, it's subject to a lot of challenge. If we could skip on, please, thank you. Okay, so 5 main purposes. Obviously, to unlock vacant high street properties by encouraging landlords to rent them out, which in turn revitalises town centres. There is a whole element around this about targeting these auctions around supporting local economic growth and benefit, in terms, and again, using that as a driver for footfall. And I think importantly what it does is it gives us a bit of a stick. So it gives us a legal mechanism to kind of take some of these long standing vacant units, which we're all kind of tearing our hair out about, and force them to move forward. So if we can move on, please. Okay, so what can be included? So premises have to be located in a designated high street or town centre, and that's the stage we're consulting on now. Until we've consulted on that and got that adopted, we can't even think about using these powers. So this is kind of quite key. The premises must be suitable for high street use, so either as a shop, restaurant, office, entertainment or leisure venue. And I've talked about the kind of the amount of time they need to be vacant. And then the final test is that it has to be considered beneficial to a local economy, society or environment, which is a kind of quite a woolly statement. And I think I could probably make most things fit into that, which is a good, it goes for us. Okay, what's not can't be included, so heavy industrial buildings, warehouses, residential properties, potentially problematic where you've had retail units, commercial units converted into residential, which then sit empty. These don't give us powers to address those. Shopping centres I'll gloss over because that doesn't affect us, but that does affect other towns. Okay, so in terms of the process, properties identified as meeting the vacancy criteria. The council will then serve a notice to the landlord, and that gives them 10 weeks to effectively find a tenant. The landlord can propose a letting arrangement, and it's kind of quite interesting seeing with the pilot areas how actually just having an area designated, suddenly you see some of these long-standing vacant units amazingly get tenants. It focuses people's minds. If no agreement can be reached, a council can then move to force an auction for the lease, and those leases can be up to 5 years. Landlord has all sorts of appeals on statutory grounds around the process, and essentially the auction is ran and the lease is awarded to the highest bidder. So you could see, and again, the pilots have seen, I think only 1 or 2 auctions have happened, and I think one of them saw premises going for half the usual market rate. So that sort of thing as well will really focus minds on getting these premises up and running. Okay, so the guidance talks a lot about building condition requirements, which can be problematic. Ignore the photo. That's no comment on me about the condition of that building, particularly because that's in Biggleswade. But I know a lot of towns will have long-standing vacant units which are in really poor state of repair, and this doesn't deal with those. Essentially, for a building to get to a point where it could go to an auction, it must meet all relevant safety standards, it must be compliant, and the landlord has to provide that information to show it's being compliant. There is funding to help work with the landlord to bring buildings into compliance, but it's for minor works. Let's skip through this slide. Okay, so this is kind of quite a new way of thinking, and we're scratching our heads about how we use this meaningfully, and I have a queue of your counterparts from other town councils already sending me the buildings they want to put forward. And let's get through the consultation, please, first. We do get some new burdens funding to support us run these, but that's only if a relatively small amount if an auction is successful. We do get some funding to pull together a register for vacant buildings in each of our designated areas, and that's something potentially we would be looking to work with the town councils on. The colleagues at the town councils know the towns far better than I do. And then there's this refurbishment grant, which I sort of touched on previously, of up to £50,000, where a notice has been served on the landlord, but minor works are needed to get into a condition where it's can be auctioned. So works to improve lettability. Okay, the big question mark is all this funding is capped at 1.5 million, which since it covers the whole of England is not going to go very far, but this is very slow to roll out. So I think it will probably take a while to work its way through it. Okay, so in terms of success, I think as I mentioned already, it's not just taking a vacant property to auction. I think that's probably the last resort. For me, the real win is engaging property owners early, encourage them to rent out, like I say, giving us a stick to encourage them to be a bit more proactive, and just improve that early cooperation. Okay, next slide. So the consultation has been running for a couple of months now. Fortunately, just timings of committees, I've come to you quite late in it. It's just how it has worked out. Hopefully you've had opportunity to look at this. What I am essentially keen to just understand is the area that we've suggested for Biggleswade, does that look correct? Go on a slide. So essentially the area we've used is the area from the local plan, and it also mirrors what's in the neighbourhood plan for the town centre. We are mindful, though, if we're talking to other town councils, that there might be buildings which are used for some of those retail other uses which might sit outside it, which we could extend the boundary to include. But that was our starter. That was our starter for Ted. For example, we could extend that area out over to the other side of Shortmead Street to cover the wellness hub. It could be extended up past the Methodist Church where there's a few units. That's entirely will be led by the consultation. The other kind of benefit as well is that once these are done, it's not set in stone. We can look at them again in a couple of years. So if we have enough people saying, well, actually, this part of the way the town's developed, these units are now fall into something that would be suitable for retail auctions, we can look to reconsult and expand the boundaries out. Okay, so in terms of next steps, consultation runs until this Sunday. Then that will all be reviewed, and where necessary, we'll look at amending boundaries. I don't think there will be an awful lot of changes, to be honest, because they're kind of quite tried and tested through the local plan and neighbourhood plans and things. But I look forward to seeing what the consultation says, and then a paper goes to executive in February to get these adopted, and then it's on into next year to look at how we can use these powers.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, we'll have comments from members. What we're being asked is the town to confirm the town centre boundary. That's what's important as part of this consultation. Councillor Russell.
I'd suggest that the town centre boundary is too wide. We have a primary shopping area within that is included in both the local plan and our neighbourhood plan, and that makes much more sense. And in the primary shopping area, there are two buildings that come to mind immediately. One, the old NatWest building in the High Street, one, the building on the corner of Mill Lane and Hitchin Street, which have been vacant for a very long while. We've got 3 other banks that have closed in the High Street, one of them only this month, but I wonder how long the others have been closed. Certainly Barclays has been closed for some time, and the Halifax, I can't remember when it closed. But I mean, those are buildings within the primary shopping area. That's more than enough to go forward for Biggleswade. And I really think, because the list that we've got on the consultation document is a bit all over the place, if I dare say so. And I mean, places like Foundry Lane, Victoria Place, the Bork, Crab Lane, Chapel Fields, no, they're not primary shopping places and certainly wouldn't be suitable. So I'd like to suggest formally that we use the primary shopping area, which is on this, on page 22 of the pack that we've got tonight. And as I say, it's already in both the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. So I'd like to formally suggest that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Russell. Is there a seconder for that proposal? There is, Councillor Thomas. Okay, any further comments? You do, okay.
I don't mind having it as the neighbourhood plan designation, simply because I'm thinking of the red line as well. Is my other thing that I've kind of got. Well, this is what I was going to ask Stephen. So what happens when something is being marketed, actively marketed, perhaps unrealistic pricing or something like that? Is that still subject to this process or not?
As I understand it, it's the main test is how long it's been vacant for in the first instance. So that would give us grounds to issue a letter to say, look, we want to explore this process with you and understand why it's not been lettable. I think this is very new, so I'll be looking a lot to sort of seeing what's happening elsewhere, and I think we're just going to come up with all sorts of scenarios like these where I will be going back to an HCLG and saying what do we do in this scenario? But this certainly gives us grounds to start those discussions. I think Councillor Russell's point about the primary shopping areas is a really good one. I think out of the two options, I would probably lean towards having the areas big as possible, just to save us not having to consult again if something comes up. But I do take your point, and I think when we look to build the registers, I think we need to build in some sort of prioritisation as to actually what's really key. And I think you're right, the town centre, the primary shopping areas is always going to be really key.
Councillor Russell.
I could add that the problems with the Red Lion, there have been various planning applications and all sorts. So I think, you know, if you were going to include that plus the primary shopping area, you'd have to look into the history of that and whether that is actually eligible.
That's why I was throwing it out there it's a difficult example, I think. Just a couple of who gets the money from the sale of the lease? I'm assuming it goes to the owner, but also presumably there's a cost to the council for going through this process. Do we get a proportion of that to cover costs? How does that work? And then obviously there's some money for the health and safety compliance. So are you saying that if it's in such a state of disrepair, it's not compliant, that you can't take this process at all, or can you force them to become compliant?
So in terms of money from release, that goes to the landlord.
Okay.
So in terms of kind of the new burdens for us taking these forward, that's for £5,000 that I mentioned.
Okay.
Which it means actually we do need to be really careful as well about what we put forward, and I'm sure we'll be weighing a number of options in different towns, and possibly come to a view with partners like the town council as to actually which one do we think would have the bigger, wider impact. We've seen when you have vacant units with tenants in, the impact that can have on footfall and things in an area, and suddenly other units become get rented and things. The buildings that are in too poor a state for repair for the £50,000 kind of grant funding, I don't know, to be honest. It covers kind of quite a broad range from those where actually it starts becoming a building controlled dangerous structures thing to other ends where it's actually the structure sound, but it just needs so much money being spent on it. This doesn't cover that, and I think that is a bit of a gap in the process, because arguably a lot of the really long-term vacant units are in that state because no one can afford the money to rent them up to use.
Okay. Thank you for explaining all of this. So we have a proposal. Councillor Russell, do you want to just reiterate what it is, perhaps in light of some of the answers we've had? It sounds to me where we're going is that certainly the priority is the primary shopping area. So would the proposal be along the grounds of that we support what is documented in the neighbourhood plan to define the town centre, but the view of this committee is that we should prioritise the primary shopping area?
I think because we've got so many vacant units in the primary shopping area, that's the area to concentrate on rather than to go wider across the defined town centre. And as I say, the primary shopping area is also already agreed by Central Bedfordshire in its local plan, and is already in the neighbourhood plan because we agreed with what Central Beds had decided. So I still think that we should concentrate on the primary shopping area because, as I say, there are at least 2 buildings that have been empty for much more than 12 months. And if those 2 could come into use, then there may be in the future other buildings that are going to have been in use. I mean, there's a charity shop that's closed. Okay, it's only been closed 2 or 3 months, but it's boarded up. It's an eyesore right in the middle of the market square. So we've got more than enough to think about in that area without going wider, is my view.
Okay. And Councillor Thomas has seconded that. So for this consultation, then we're being asked to consider, what was the exact wording on the slide? Sorry, don't worry, it's gone. But to agree where the boundaries would be for the sake of this exercise. So that would be the primary shopping area as documented on map 3 of the neighbourhood plan and in the local plan. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favour of that proposal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any against? 1. Abstentions? I will also abstain. Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you, Stephen, for coming along, and thank you for explaining all of this. I think particularly interesting to see how this can be used as a stick to nudge some landlords to put a little bit back into our towns. So best of luck with that. Thank you. No need to say, by the way, so thank you. Item 9D, Community Governance Review, Stage 2, for members to receive and consider information related to the second stage of the CBC Community Governance Review process. So let's hope this is like the Shrek movies and the sequel's better than the original. So First time round, we didn't really get much changes from the community governance review, despite the town council submitting a very detailed document, including some agreement with at least one neighbouring parish, I believe. And we now have stage 2 of the consultation, where we have the opportunity potentially to go forward again. I don't know that they have ruled out entirely what the town council was saying, but they were quite dismissive in the responses, which is regrettable. Does anybody have any comments on the community governance review stage 2? So this is to do with this is to do with parish boundaries, of course. Any comments? Councillor Russell. Thank you, Stephen.
Just to say that they do make clear that they're not going to reconsider things that have been put forward in the first phase. But I think it's quite naughty of what's happened, because there was nothing to indicate. I mean, the reason given for not taking forward at least one of the proposals from the town council was that they're not doing large things. Well, if they weren't going to be doing large things, whatever that means, why wasn't that stated in the beginning? Because the town council spent a lot of time and energy, officer time, councillor time, time of other councils, because we spoke to all our neighbouring councils, and one of them agreed to the boundary change, because there is a call for site for commercial development, which would be completely within Biggleswade if that boundary is moved. And Edworth Parish meeting said they did not have the resources to deal with a large commercial planning application, and that they would be very okay for the whole of the site that's being put forward to be in Biggleswade. We then said to them, okay, well, if it comes into Biggleswade, we'll work with you because it's adjacent to, or was part of their land. We would work with them to put forward comments on any plan that comes forward. So we also have in our submission, we've quoted the resolutions from the 4 parish councils. So 2 parish councils want to see what happens with the extension to Land East, which is what we've been hearing about tonight, before they decide where to go. The other one, and Councillor Daniels is here from Northill, they don't want a change in the boundary. Okay, leave that for now. But I certainly think that Central Beds should be allowing the thing that's been agreed between Edworth Parish Meeting and Biggleswade Town Council. Why not? And why is it such a large thing? It's not actually large. There are no houses on the plot of land. It's simply farmland. So there's no changing to populations or anything like that. It is simply moving a piece of farmland into Biggleswade so that the site on the call for sites is in Biggleswade rather than across the boundary. And so I would appreciate the support of the joint committee to write to Brian Dunleavy, who heads up the team who are doing this, to say that the agreed boundary change between Biggleswade and Edworth should go ahead as per the town council's submission at stage 1.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Just to add to that, do you want to add anything onto that around further consideration post call for sites? Because the town council's response remained, and neighbouring parish responses in Sutton, for example, remained open to waiting at least until there's some clarity over that. Do you want to reference that in your response, or do you want to focus on Edworth?
I think focus on Edworth at this point.
Okay.
But I mean, the Central Bedfordshire didn't need to do a call for sites in law, because they did one in 2017, 2018. And when the invitation came out, it said they decided to do the call for sites because of all the development that's happened in Central Beds, which is fair enough. We've had a lot of development in Biggleswade, and it looks as if we might get a lot more development. But let's wait and see, because if they've done a call for sites within the 10 years that they needed to do, maybe they'll do another call for sites once the new local plan is in place, because then we'll see where the development is likely to be. So I think at the moment I'd rather focus on Edworth because there's agreement there. I mean, I think at some stage we are going to have to look again at Northill, and I think we're going to have to look at Dunton and Sutton, because if that 4,500 houses goes next to the 1,500 we were talking tonight, I'm afraid it goes both into Dunton Parish and into Sutton Parish, so there are issues there. And as it says in the report, those two parishes want to see whether they can fight that development before they make any decision on whether the boundaries should change. And I think we need to respect that.
So the proposal for now is that we write to Brian Dunleavy, basically the elections and boundaries guy at Central Beds, saying that the agreement between Biggleswade Town Council and Edworth, which has been agreed by respective councils, should be taken forward as part of stage 2. We can't see why it was dismissed as part of stage 1.
And just to say that the rest of the community governance review is all about voting numbers in parishes and wards and all the rest of it. It's not affected at all because there are no properties within the land that would be transferred.
And we'll include that in the commentary. No, that's fine. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Strawn is seconding. Comments?
If I may,
yes, you may.
Seconding, it's entirely logical, I think, that if the Edworth part actually gets developed, it will actually be an extension directly of the main development that's already in Biggleswade, and therefore it's totally illogical for it to remain in Edworth when it is actually part of a Biggleswade development. So it just seems entirely logical to actually just treat it as one and part, because it'd be ridiculous to have part of that major development in Edworth and the other part in Biggleswade when the only way into it appears to be from Biggleswade.
Yes, true. Any further comments? Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. With my Northall hat on, I could not have let this item go with informing you all that I give my unequivocal support to Northall Parish Council in the stand they've made to this land grab that you that you want to make. As far as I'm concerned, the River Livel is the boundary, and that will always be the boundary. I don't think it'll ever change. If we have our way, we may change the routing of the A1 at some point, and so I want to keep Lower Caldicott in the parish of Northall. Thank you.
Can I just say, in that case, Central Bedfordshire Council should change their website so that it says Northville Household Waste Recycling Centre, not Biggleswade.
Agreed. Councillor Whitaker.
I'm not getting into that argument. I'm going to go to the other side and argue about Sutton and Dunton instead. So, I mean, my feeling is, I mean, arguably, Sutton Parish Council might decide to become Sutton Town Council and want to take all of Land East as part of Sutton. I mean, they would have a very good, you know, it's closer to Sutton than it is to Biggleswade. So they would have a very good argument for doing so, especially if the call for sites was successful and those extra houses were built. Those extra 4,500 houses end up being built so close to Sutton. So I can't support that bit being included in Biggleswade because I actually think there's a lot of conversation to be had there. I totally get your point about Ivell. It is a bit weird though, because everybody thinks Sainsbury's is Biggleswade, everybody thinks the tires is Biggleswade, but I don't mind it being yours. I can happily hand it over. And we've always worked together and, you know, on that sort of stuff. Edworth, if they're happy, I can support that. I'm happy with that. I do think it's complicated though. I don't think it's as straightforward as just saying we agree with all of it. So I do think we have to pick out that Edworth part, but I think your motion does that. Yeah.
Councillor Watkins.
You've certainly got my sympathy on the Edworth matter. If you don't mind, as the chairman of the committee, could you copy me in your correspondence to Brian, and then that can instigate a conversation with him, because I do think there's probably a little bit of unfairness there. I think the other items, I respect what Councillor Daniels says, and I think Hayley makes a very good point about Sutton. I think you're perhaps premature with those ones, but certainly Edworth, I think you've got a good case for that to be revisited. So I'll certainly have that discussion with Brian.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Perfect. So we have a proposal then. The proposal is to focus on where we have agreement with Edworth, and that is to change the boundary and to write to Brian Dunleavy and CC and Councillor Watkins and me, and also stating in that letter that there's agreement between the two parishes and that no houses are moving. It doesn't change the electoral map in that sense. It is purely boundaries which will, could future planning applications could affect. So, all those in favour of that proposal, could you please show, please? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That is carried. So we will write to Brian. Okay. Item 9E, Section 106 update. For members to receive a brief update from the Head of Finance and Head of Governance on progress made identifying Section 106. Now, Ernest can't be here, but we do have Karim and we have Ian. So would one of you, Councillor Watkins.
I'm very sorry, I'm going to have to leave. Mrs. W informed me that a certain young man is refusing to go to bed until he gets his bedtime story from me. I'm really sorry. That's a reason I'm going to have to go. It's all right.
No problem. We'll minute that if that's okay, please. We wish young Master Watkins a restful bedtime. So we're on item 9E. Karim.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the report covers spending to date this financial year on a list of Section 106 mini projects which have been delivered or are still just being delivered now. Figure 1 sets out 5 mini projects which the Town Council would like to deliver, which total up to £41,000 and are set against in the figure the various uncommitted amounts from a list of Section 106 funding allocations which cover from car parks to town centre and villages and halls, village halls rather. The one thing to add here actually is that there are some planned electrical works for the town square. I think are scheduled for February 2026 to start. Those are using something in the region of up to £100,000 worth of uncommitted town centre funding, and some of these mini projects here listed in the table are subject to that work being carried out successfully, and whatever the balance will be then being reallocated to these. Officers here have been collaborating quite closely with Stephen and his team as well over these. One other thing to say, which isn't actually in the report, but I think it's fair to raise, is there is a action from the action log for the Joint Committee for CBC officers to come to provide a short report to the next Joint Committee with Section 106 uncommitted funds projects going out to 2028. So that would be really helpful for BTC officers to see.
Okay.
So
thank you, Karim. So we obviously know what the uncommitted funds are, don't we? It's just how we access those funds and unlock them for the benefits of Biggleswade. And I think we've clearly had some success with that and the electrical work that will need to go on in the town centre. It's the rest of those funds and how we make sure that we're getting in early to deploy them to the benefit of the town. And I think what this paper is trying to do is to start that conversation in a different way and be proactive rather than reactive. So I'm happy to take this in any way members want to, but I would like us to focus on what's in front of us, please, rather than the broad Section 106 conversation that we sometimes end up having. Comments, councillors? Councillor Scroll?
Well started. I think we should be progressing this as recommended, because the concern I always have with Section 106 monies is that if we don't use it, we can lose it after a period of time, and I think that is important that we make. But I think this is a good starting point, and it's nice to see the working relationship between officers on getting this far.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Whitaker, then Councillor Russell.
Just to say, I don't think we've ever lost anything for Biggleswade ever in terms of Section 106 money, because actually the officers monitor it very closely so that if anything's coming up to the time, we make sure it doesn't lapse for exactly that reason, because it would be awful if it did.
Correct.
I think this is a really positive way forward, making it really transparent. It's great to hear that it's being used for positive, things, and things are going to come up. There's no desperate urgency to spend it all tomorrow, is what I would say. And as the town grows, we've got time to actually think where will this money do the best work. So I would urge some caution not to spend it all in one go in a rush, and make sure we spend it on the right things For me, I think that's important.
Thank you, Councillor Whitaker. Councillor Russell?
I'd just like to second the proposal from Councillor Strawn about the recommendation that we do ask Central Beds to cooperate with the Town Council on these projects.
Okay, so that's seconded. Are there any further comments? No. Okay, so I'm trying to think how we take this forward then, because this is all very new. For this joint committee actually making a proposal in terms of spending specific line items. Councillor Barrett?
I think it goes back to the very beginning of the conversations we had around this.
Yeah.
That we would be much more proactive in the sense of the section 106 amounts that were available rather than waiting for us to be told about it. And I think that was the original problem from a Biggleswade Town Council point of view. So we're now much more proactive through our officers to make sure these things are brought to members at various meetings. So I think that is already happening. So I think that is the way forward, being more proactive rather than waiting for things to come to us.
Okay. The only one I have I think you're absolutely right. The only one I do raise a slight eyebrow about here is mobile large metal planters, 12,500. If we're thinking holistically about what the town centre looks like, investing in something that is potentially quite a substantial piece of infrastructure, do we want to do that until we have the wider vision? I don't know. Perhaps we want a prioritisation around some of these. I'd suggest particularly the Orchard Centre signal boost is really quite important to making that community facility the best it can be. So, you know, if I was just saying from the chair, I don't know if you're comfortable with this, Councillor Strawn, perhaps prioritising the bottom item there and seeing how far we get with the other ones.
Certainly, I think the Orchard Centre is essential. It's not a great sum, so I've got no difficulty with that being the number one priority.
If we can't get £1,800 for the Orchard Centre, then we are really going back to the drawing board. So let's. So your proposal then is that we take this forward with Central Beds as proactively as we can. We'll find the right officer and let them know that Joint Committee has hopefully resolved to support using these line items for these projects. We'll work with Central Beds to see how that goes forward. I suggest we bring this back in January, so at least as a progress update, if members are happy with that then. So all those in favour of that proposal, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? No. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you very, very much. It was Town Council officers who have drafted this paper, and you know, if this model works going forward, then there's a lot of potential here, I think. Item 9F, non-electric vehicles obstructing EV charging bays at the Bulk in Biggleswade. Before I discuss this item, I'd just like to say generally, you know, we're trying to be a little bit more strategic as a committee, and it's not that this is not important or relevant, but this is the sort of thing that ward councillors are paid an allowance to go and pursue. So I don't want to preempt anything from the chair, but we have Biggleswade ward councillors for the West in the room. Do you have any thoughts on this about how we might take this forward? I'm not sure it's something that requires a great deal of discussion, Councillor Whitaker.
I'm happy to take this forward, first of all, if you're happy for me to chair, or if the committee's happy for me to do that. And I can do that with Paul. I think you and I, you know, we work together on that stuff already. I know Carol knows that this car park and the functionality of these particular chargers has been an ongoing issue on and off forever. So I'm happy to pick it up again. In terms of the car park filling up, I think it was intentionally set in terms of the restrictions on the parking there, so that actually it could be used for parking for school drop-off and pick-up time. My understanding was the timings were originally set to facilitate that, rather than trying to prohibit it, because actually people do need to be able to park to take their kids to school sometimes, although also we try and encourage active transport and people scooting and cycling and other things. The engine running, we have an engine idling policy, so we can try and get enforcement down to look at that. So happy to pick it up. I think there's lots of elements to this, but I think I'm happy to pick it up and I can feed back to Carol.
Thank you. If you're okay with that, members, that we'll move on from this item. Yeah. So we'll just minute that briefly and move on. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Whitaker. Item 10. So this is an agenda item that I've been keen to establish, and this doesn't really require much discussion, but it's to give a forward view of what is coming the joint committee's way. And if there's anything missing from this list, then we can add it now, or we can manage it offline. I would just add a couple of things. The first is the section 106 item that we've just discussed. We'd like an update on progress, and we'll find the best way to do that depending how much progress has been made. We've also discussed the call for sites, and there's an action with me to email the head of planning. And per the exempt session, we did reference the Market Square vision for January, but I'm happy to discuss that offline as well, if that's helpful. I presume we can strike off Ivor Valley School, given that we've had a really useful update from officers this evening. Councillor Daniels, you have a suggestion though, don't you?
Yes.
Is it about parish boundaries?
Sorry.
No, nothing. No, sorry, I was just messing with you about parish boundaries.
That's okay.
Carry on.
I hope you are all aware that I've been trying to push forward with a joint committee, a sustainable crossing from Northhill to Biggleswade. So I do want to join you. I would like to see this, brought up on this committee, please. We've got a Biggleswade and Northhill committee now, which we meet regularly about every quarter. We are discussing ways of how we can do this. I'd like to see it on at this committee to get the thoughts of the people that come here.
I think this is a very important. This is the sort of item that we need to be discussing at this committee, actually, because I know the town council has a view, and it aligns with that of Northhill Parish Council. And the question is whether there's more that Central Beds can do. So, shall we add that to the list? But I think we do need, from that little working group that you have, a bit of a status update in writing, just to bring us all onto the same page. And it doesn't need to be more than a paragraph or so, but then what you need us to back you up on, or what you need us to consider, if that's all right. Councillor Russell.
We've got a meeting in early December, so we can prepare something for January's joint committee.
Perfect. Then that sounds good. So we will add that. So when we're just minuting item 10, if that's okay, please, because this is quite important from sorry, go on, Councillor Russell.
I was just going to say about the call for sites. We did say in item, I think 7, that we were going to discuss it at our January meeting, but it's not been brought forward to this list. And yep. I think it needs to be added. So as well as the underpass and the section 106, I think we need to add the call for sites.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've got call for sites, sustainable crossing, potentially Market Square vision, depending on progress. And we will have an update on section 106 and that item that we discussed under item 9E. That's in addition to potentially Martin's Law, and we can go into a bit more detail on that potentially at the time. But then also definitely an attendee from the ICB. To provide an update, and I will share those questions in advance. Councillor Whitaker.
We have got a bit of a problem with some antisocial behaviour, particularly in and around the town centre, and it comes and goes, I think it's fair to say, and it's back again with a vengeance at the moment. I think if we could have, I would really welcome someone from the police actually to come and talk to us. I think that would be a really positive thing, because I've had messages from residents, some really serious incidents taking place and not getting the response that I would expect. I think it's fair to say.
Shall we? I don't want to downplay that. Obviously, we're looking quite full for January, but certainly the meeting after, if that's okay.
I still think, given that this arose in the summer, it went away a little while. Now it's back again. I think it's going to be something that keeps coming back. So I'd be interested to understand their strategy for how they're going to make sure it doesn't keep coming back and back and back and back. As a growing town, I think we're going to get this sort of thing more and more. So I think we need to make sure that we've got the infrastructure and the support in place from the police to make sure that we do.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Did we say we were also going to have Salamanca in January as well?
We will discuss that item in January. Well remembered, Councillor Barrett. So we will have an item related to governance around Land East and that development. Good. Just a reminder, for some of the things that we can't bring here, you know, the town council do have an invited speaker slot, so hopefully we can find a way of partnering there if that forum is equally appropriate. Yes, Asia. Looking forward to it.
The Police and Crime Commissioner is also attending a meeting of the BATPC County Committee tomorrow evening.
Excellent. Okay, well, we'll see you here in December. Here's mince pies afterwards as well, so perfect. Okay, I think we're clear about how this agenda item is going to play out in future, and hopefully, if there's other things that members want to consider, please, you know, do contact me offline. The only other thing I will add is general feedback on the way we're trying to run these meetings now and getting that a little bit more strategic. You know, if there's things that are working, don't worry, you don't need to tell me. But if there are things that are not, like, let's have that conversation now. So because we've got, you know, quarterly meetings, I've got, you know, a few more left as chairman, hopefully. So hopefully we can get some of that sorted and get these meetings just a little bit more impactful. And hopefully we've seen some of that tonight. So item 11, items for information. So current and upcoming consultations. This is just a list of consultations that we have open at Central Beds at the moment. The town council can pick and choose which it wishes to consider on its own agendas. And if you want more information from ward members, you can just contact us as need be. Councillor Russell.
We've already had school admissions on our recent agenda.
Amazing, brilliant. There we go. We'll keep this item here for information though, because I think it is useful. Right, we have item 12, which is exempt. We have just one thing to consider, which is the co-option of a new member. We will move into exempt session. I'm going to jump to item 13 though, which is the date of the next meeting, which is the 15th of January. And now I'm going to jump back to item 12 and go into exempt. So we will end there. Thank you.